Going on, people, we are Tottenham TV, back here for yet another Tottenham update. If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and go and follow us on all social media platforms: X, Instagram, TikTok and Facebook. But let's get straight into this update. We've got 4 topics to speak about today, and first up is the manager situation, as Jack Pitbrook has done an article surrounding Ange Postecoglou and potential future managers, and he does say that Ange Postecoglou's future at Tottenham beyond the season is in serious doubt. Tottenham will make Andoni Iraola the top target if they are to change the manager this summer, with Marco Silva and Thomas Frank under consideration as well. Iraola's £10 million release clause is unlikely to be a barrier that would get in the way of Spurs looking to appoint him. Marco Silva is seen as the second most likely candidate for Spurs if they move on from Ange, behind Andoni Iraola. He was highly rated during Tottenham's 2023 managerial search, reaching the final 3, only for his job to go to Ange Postecoglou instead. And Thomas Frank did hold talks with Johan Lang about becoming the manager of Aston Villa in 2022, and he is a potential candidate for Spurs if Ange Postecoglou is to be dismissed. So the list is being drawn up.
Well, the noise is growing. The biggest part of that article, I would say, is the fact that he says Ange Postecoglou's future is in serious doubt regardless of what happens at the end of the between now and the end of the season, which is something we haven't heard before, to be honest, which doesn't sound very good for Ange, and obviously comes from a very kind of reliable, reputable publication in The Athletic, who have usually quite good sources. I remember during the end times of like Mourinho and Conte's era, they were very much signalling like things aren't going well, like in terms of in the camp, and things aren't a happy place. So usually when they're saying these things, definitely doesn't look good for Ange Postecoglou. Obviously, the position we're in the league and how the season has gone, it's completely understandable that that's kind of the position of the club, and that his when you're in the position we are in the league, of course his future is going to be up for he's going to be under major scrutiny, and that's the right. In terms of the new managers and the managers that they've outlined there, I don't think any of them are bad managers, don't get me wrong. I like all of them. I think they're all have done brilliant jobs at their respective clubs, and I think they're all very good managers. But I'm just not massively moved by any of them, really. I don't think any of them... obviously, they all 3 of them probably come in and do get us higher in the league, don't get me wrong. In terms of them not running into similar problems that Ange has run into, maybe obviously not being this low down in the league, but in terms of running into similar problems when we get European football and really progressing the club to where we want to be, I don't know, but I think they can improve us. I like Iraola. I guess the good thing about Iraola is he plays like a really intense style in terms of the pressing and stuff like that. So in terms of how much he demands from the players, that's kind of a good way to segue. But in terms of how he plays, he's very direct. He doesn't really focus on having control of games. And I can see that very much frustrating fans, to be honest, in some certain games, especially when teams are sitting low block. I remember listening to an interview from one of the Bournemouth forwards, I think it was Semenyo, and he was asked who the hardest opponent if he faces is, and he said Everton, because of how they play. And that's quite telling in terms of how Iraola's system can sometimes struggle when he comes up against those kind of opponents, because he doesn't like to have control. They sometimes are so direct in these kind of games when it requires a bit more patience, and they sometimes struggle on those occasions. And he likes to have a kind of very chaotic style of play, likes to get the ball forward. Iraola said in an interview when they get the ball, they like to go straight to the number 9, because that's when the opposition defence is most unsettled, and that's fine. But sometimes, especially when you'll get to a bigger club like Tottenham, teams will be obviously waiting for you to do that, whereas at Bournemouth, obviously most teams come against them looking to win the game and try and express themselves, and they don't see Bournemouth like a big club like they would see Tottenham. So I think obviously he comes under different pressure at Tottenham than he would under Bournemouth. But I'm not saying he's not going to work or he's a bad manager. I'm just saying it's a very different level once he comes to us. So I think he can improve us, but in the short term, long term, I don't know. I like Marco Silva as well. A very adaptable manager. He's a bit better in possession, I feel like, than Iraola. But I also feel like sometimes his team lack a bit of identity. Sometimes he's very, very adaptable. He changes a lot of things. But sometimes I feel like Fulham can be a bit stale, I find, on occasion. Thomas Frank I like as well, and he got a history of overperforming his wage budget, and that's something obviously Levy will love. That kind of element to him, and the fact he's got Brentford, I think it's like miraculous how he's got Brentford to being a mid-table Premier League team to where they've been, and the small budget, small stadium, getting the most out of what he does. The question for him is, can he adapt his style coming to Tottenham from being fairly pragmatic to Brentford to, would that be accepted at Tottenham? He'd have to adapt it quite a lot, and whether he can do that to a great standard, I guess, is up for debate.
Yeah, there is a question between Marco Silva and Thomas Frank. Like, how would they adapt to going to a bigger club? Would they play a different brand of football? Is Thomas Frank only playing that kind of brand of football because he is managing a Brentford and because of the money he gets to spend and the wage budget that he gets and everything like that, and he's managing the underdog pretty much more time than not in the Premier League? So there is a question to that. I'm sure if you ask Thomas Frank what he'd prefer to play, probably high pressing front foot football. And I think we've heard that from managers in the past. And with Andoni Iraola, I feel like he's done such a good job with his teams in Spain. He's done such a good job at Bournemouth. I feel like he is kind of a manager that's ready to go on to that next level. And I feel like he'd be a good fit for Tottenham. But a manager that's not on the list that Spurs should probably have in consideration is the Stuttgart manager, Hoeneß. I mean, I saw an article the other day about him saying like this guy is going to be the next big manager out of Germany after the the long list of like Tuchel, Klopp and everyone else, and Nagelsmann and these kind of guys. And I feel like as well, like he could be a good option for us.
I like him. The only problem with him is he literally a few weeks ago just signed a contract, so that's a bit of an issue. I think if we were sounding him out, and he was like looking to leave, I don't know if he would have signed that contract unless that hasn't happened yet. But yeah, I'd like him. I think he's one that a lot of people are saying in terms of how he plays is really exciting and very energetic. But he just signed literally a few weeks ago just signed a contract. So whether that's a viable option at the moment, I don't know. But yeah, look, again, I like those managers. I'm not massively moved by any of them, to be honest. I like Iraola though.
Do you not think that any of these three managers could do a better job than Ange?
Well, considering we're not in Europe next season, probably, but could they do? Will they definitely do a better job than what Ange did when we were out of Europe? I'm not certain on that, to be honest.
I don't think these guys can get us in the top 5.
He got into top 5, Ange.
That's what I'm saying.
So what is it?
So top 4.
I'm not saying no, but I'm not convinced. I think fifth in without Europe is probably what they'll do. And then once we get into Europe, especially with Iraola, where Ange had a few problems with the rotation and a lot of injuries, is he going to run into similar issues? I'm not certain he won't.
The reality for me is like I'm just like kind of disillusioned with the thought of Tottenham, and I don't know if any manager can really get us to where we want to be, but I do think managers can do a better job than Ange Postecoglou, and I feel like I'm undecided about Thomas Frank because I feel like he's just one of these guys who's just a really good fit for where he is, and I'm not sure. I'm undecided about him, but I do think Marco Silva and Andoni, two very different managers, two do different philosophies and styles, but I feel like both of them could do a really good job at Spurs.
I think they can improve us. I also believe we can improve if we kept Ange as well. The question is, would the improvement... first of all, does Ange deserve to stay? And there's obviously what the season we've had this season, no. But if you're asking me next season, if we had Ange in charge, if we had Iraola in charge, let's say we didn't have European football, who would do a better job? I'm not convinced the answer is Iraola.
Well, time will tell to see which one, if Ange does get sacked at the end of the season and which one does come in. And I'm sure some other names is going to be added to the frame as the time goes on as well. So we'll have to wait and see.
Also, there's been conflicting reports. I don't know if you've seen. Some reports are saying he'd be seriously interested in coming, and some are saying he wouldn't actually be interested in coming.
Yeah, I don't think any of them are like kind of reliable sources though.
Yeah, can't remember what the sources were, but I saw conflicting ones.
Let's talk about potential players now. A player called Coney De Winter from Genoa. Calcio Mercato says that Spurs have asked for information about De Winter, who, even though is a central defender by trade, has also filled in at right back and even occasionally as the number 6 as well. Tottenham have joined the race for the 22-year-old, have been joined by Manchester United and West Ham, who have also inquired about him ahead of the summer. Inter Live say that Tottenham are leading the race for the defender as we edge closer to the summer window. However, Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund are both big fans of the player, of his physical attributes. West Ham are also thought to be keeping an eye on the centre-back, and Inter Milan are also watching the Genoa man and have confidence that they can compete for a deal with him. And Romano has also said that Cody de Winter could leave Genoa in the summer, as Premier League and Serie A clubs have started initial approaches for the 22-year-old centre-back, attracting strong interests with potential move expected to happen. So he's saying he's more than likely going to be leaving in the summer. Obviously, with the Romero news, I mean, I doubt we're going to replace Romero with Cody de Winter, but I mean, I don't know much about him, but what I do know about him is that he's a right-sided centre-back, right-footed, got massive physical attributes. And
6'2".
Yeah, and he's from a club that Spurs have done a lot of dealings with in the past, with Radu Dragusin. Jed Spence was out there on loan as well. It'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. 2
caps for Belgium. What I can tell you is he did have a 2-month hamstring injury this season, so it's not fantastic considering the problems we've had with hamstrings this season. But it does seem like a versatile centre-back who's quite decent on the ball as well, and is one who's really coming into his own this season. But yeah, I can't say I watch Genoa week in, week out, but in terms of him having a big hamstring injury this season, it's not fantastic news.
Yeah.
It was out for 2 months with a hamstring injury.
It's a proper significant one, yeah.
Yeah, so
must have been a tear.
Must have been a tear if he's out for that long. So that's not fantastic. Yeah.
So that's him. Next up, Gazzetta Italia is saying that Spurs are willing to offer 40 million euros for Lazio winger Gustav Isaksson. We did speak about him the other day. Has started to really cement his place in that Danish team as well, and he's been a regular starter for Lazio this season as well.
Yeah, we spoke about him again. Like in terms of like goal contribution record, it's not amazing, but he's decent 6 goal contributions in 29 games. He's 23. Provides competition for someone like Brennan, who obviously gets a lot more goal contributions, but maybe this guy obviously gets involved a lot more during the games in terms of dribbling, taking people on. Seems to be a really good young player who's doing a really important job for Lazio, but is he the answer to our right wing problems? I don't know.
Yeah, me neither, to be honest. Probably hopefully we get a closer look at him in the semi-final.
Yeah,
and
hopefully not. Hopefully they don't make it.
Yeah, well. Let's hope we make it first and foremost, no matter who we're playing against. But last but not least, we're going to talk about Fiorentina striker Moise Kean, as a publication here says Tottenham, Arsenal and Aston Villa have all expressed interest in the former Everton striker ahead of the summer. Kean has a contract release clause of £43.5 million. I mean, he's having a stunning season for Fiorentina, isn't he?
He is. 15 goals in 26 games. I saw he just scored a brace in the last internationals as well against Germany. Yeah. Really good brace when they were 3-0 down. He just stepped up and got a couple of goals really impressively. One who's obviously done the rounds, hasn't he? Juventus, PSG, Everton, been at so many different clubs, hasn't really found a home. But this season at Juventus at Fiorentina has done really, really well, and looks like he's finally realising his potential. He's how old is he? He's 25. So he's still like a decent age, just hitting his prime, and it seems like. It reminds me a bit of like, an Ivan Toney and Ollie Watkins in terms of a striker who in his early years didn't kind of hit the ground running, but is maybe starting to fulfill his potential at like mid-20s.
He's been a kind of slow burner, hasn't he, Moise? And, he's been at Juventus twice, he's been at Everton, he's kind of been around the houses and not really flourished anywhere.
He was talked a lot when he was younger, wasn't he?
Yeah, and, Everton bought him off the back of it, Juventus rebought him off the back of it. Obviously showing signs of promise in training and in games here and there, but never really, flourished on the pitch, it's fair to say. And he's really found himself a home at Fiorentina. He's banged in the goals this season. And if I was him, I'd probably stay there for a year or two more and just see where it takes him, because at the moment it's just one season.
Yeah, but that's the nature of football now. After one season, teams are already circling, because the days of like waiting for 2 or 3 good years before you get someone seem to be over. Teams want to, it's like teams want to be first. It's better to be first than to be late.
Yeah, you know what I mean? The thing is, it's like that's true, but also it's more risk of making a mistake in the transfer market.
I agree. That I'm not saying it's the best approach. I'm just saying that's what clubs seem to do now.
Yeah, no, I
so
know
I'm
that,
saying
yeah.
if we don't get him, someone else is going to get him.
Yeah. So would you want him?
I don't know if I'd want him. Would I want him? I don't. Is he better than Solanke? I think he's scoring more goals. I don't know if necessarily think he's a better player than Solanke.
He's better than Richarlison, I would say.
On current form, yeah. If Richarlison can stay fit, I don't think there's that much in it, to be honest. But he can't, so I guess I'll take him, over Richarlison.
Well, let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Would you like to see Moise Kean at Tottenham Hotspur in the summer? And let us know your thoughts regarding any of the other topics that we did speak about today. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.